everyone, Jamie Starr here for the New World News Network. Check the links below for my other endeavors. You can find videos of me working on upcoming albums and such. This episode, I'm going to get into this crazy idea that's picking up traction again, is having a loving family unfair advantage. It's also the concept that reading your children bedtime stories is racist because it unfairly advantages them. And this is the social justice going completely crazy. If anyone hasn't read the Communist Manifesto, you should take a look at it because it contains a lot of the ideas that are being pushed throughout society right now as normal or what should be the new norms, because as with all forms of Marxism, whatever norm there is should be overthrown and completely destroyed. And that's why you see concepts like what's ugly is what's beautiful, and what's, awful, or what's normal and always been normal and traditional is privileged or an unfair advantage or something to that extent. So, it's having a loving family an unfair advantage. Plato famously wanted to abolish the family and put children into the care of the state. Yeah, well, so do a lot of our politicians. Some still think the traditional family has a lot to answer for, but some plausible arguments remain in favor of it. Joe Gelonesi meets a philosopher with a rescue plan that's very much in tune with the times. And this was one of the main ideas behind feminism, as per the Rockefellers who funded it. They wanted to break up the family, they wanted the women working, paying taxes like everyone else, and they wanted the children to be taken care of by the state. And of course, children in state custody, CPS, are 7 times more likely to be abused and everything. And I really wonder, what does the traditional family have to answer for if it unfairly advantages people? If it unfairly advantages people, it seems like it's a good thing. So many disputes in our liberal democratic society hinge on the tension. Well, here's our first problem. We have a liberal democratic society. Tensions between inequality and fairness, between groups, between sexes, between individuals, and increasingly between families. Yeah, how about we stop with all the tension? How about we stop thinking that there's a problem everywhere and that we need to social engineer everything to make everything this utopia, because it doesn't work well. I checked the history records with places and people when they try this shit. The power of the family to tilt inequality hasn't gone unnoticed, and academics and public commentators have been blowing the whistle now for quite some time. Well, I'll tell you who has a lot to answer for in my mind: academics and public commentators and public officials. Now, philosophers Adam Smith and Harry Brighthouse have felt compelled to conduct a cool reassessment. Swift, in particular, has been conflicted for some time over the curious situation that arises when a parent wants to do their best for their child, but in the process makes the playing field for others more lopsided. Oh, you have to be concerned for everyone else's little kids. You can't worry about your family because, you got to worry about the society and the collective and the rest of the world. So you better be stupid so that everyone else doesn't have to be smart. I mean, that's the mentality here. Everyone's got to be. It's what happens with communism. Everyone has to end up poor because we can't have anyone be too rich. So now everyone's got to end up stupid because it's mean to those that are disadvantaged. Oh my God. I got interested in this question because you were a douchebag interested in equality of opportunity. Life, nothing's fair. Things aren't equal. I mean, this is what happens when little children try making sense of the big, scary world. I had done some work on social mobility, and the evidence is overwhelmingly that the reason why children born into different families have very different chances in life is because of what happens in those families. Well, at least you didn't say it's because of what color they are, because there's a lot of people who think that as well. Once he got thinking, Swift could see that the issue stretches well beyond the fact that some families can afford private schooling, nannies, tutors, and house in good suburbs, functional family interactions, from going to the cricket to reading bedtime stories, from a largely unseen but palpable fault line between families, the consequence is a gap in social mobility and equality that can last for generations. So what do we do? Well, of course, according to communism, you abolish the family and then take all kids into the state, and we can just make sure they're all equally propagandized and brain damaged, so no one can ever achieve anything that's beyond the reach of anyone else. And think of the world we would live in. Because we would all be back to fucking spear chucking mud huts, hunter gatherers, and I mean, this is so regressive. It's so regressive. It's disgusting. This is like have your children raised by wolves, basically. According to Swift, from a purely instrumental position, the answer is straightforward. One way philosophers might think about solving the social justice problem would be simply abolishing the family. If the family is the source of unfairness in society, then it looks plausible to think that if we abolish the family, there would be a more level playing field. And this is why I tell people, you want to know what's rebellious in this day and age? Fucking Christianity, having a big family, being a moral person, like everything that you're told through television is corny and gross and ew, I don't want to have kids, not ever. Do all that shit, and that's what will make you a rebel. The shit, me having fucking blue hair, that's not rebellious. That's fucking douchebag shit. That's the normal nowadays. It's not the first time a philosopher has thought about such a drastic solution. 2,400 years ago, another sage reasoned it, and the care of the children should be undertaken by the state, because the state is, the state is the new god. Plato pulled few punches in the Republic when he called for the abolition of the family and for children of the elite to be given over to the state. Aristotle didn't agree, citing the since often used argument of the neglect of things. How did the Greek Empire end up? Oh, yeah. Grown guys were fucking little boys banging animals. I mean, it's sort of like the Roman Empire. Again, if you watch the other video I did about the puppy play, Greece was one of these places where anytime you have these empires they rise up and then they go a little nuts and then it collapses. So this is, again, these ideas being forth, like socialism, bestiality, pedophilia, abolishing the family. It's like, hey guys, how can we just fucking put the nail in the coffin of the American Empire? Oh, let's go to the playbooks. Ugh. Neglect held in things common. Swift echoes the Aristotelian line. The breakup of the family is plausible, maybe, he thinks, but even to the most hard-hearted, there's something off-key about it. Yeah, really? Nearly everyone has thought about this would conclude that it is a really bad idea to be raised by state institutions, unless something has gone wrong, he says. Intuitively, it doesn't feel right, but for a philosopher, solutions require more than an initial reaction, so Swift and his colleague Bryce set to work on a respectable analytic defense of the family, asking themselves the deceptively simple questions: why are families a good thing exactly? Oh, I don't know, maybe because it's nature and it's natural and it's just how shit happens. Like, you stick a dick in a vagina and a baby pops out, so you did this thing. There's consequences. Now you do what you do. Like, oh my god. How do you get a degree in philosophy and then think this is a sensible question to even ask, or that there's it's not that deep? Like, that's one of my cliche sayings, that it's not that deep. Like, not surprising, it begins with kids and ends with parents. It is the children's interest in family life that is most important, says Swift. For all From all we now know, it is the children's interest to be parented, and to be parented well. Meanwhile, from the adult point of view, it looks as if there is something very valuable in being a parent. He concedes parenting might not be for everyone, and some can go badly wrong, but in general is an irreplaceable relationship. Like, this is groundbreaking or something. Parenting a child makes for what's called distinctive and special contribution to the flourishing and well-being of adults. It seems from both the child and adult's points of view there is something to be said about living in a family. This doesn't exactly parry the criticism that families exacerbate social inequality. Fuck inequality. That's what I have to say about that. Fuck equal. For this, Swift and Brighouse need to sort out those activities that contribute to unnecessary inequality from those that don't. And this is where you'll have it, where they'll be like, oh, well, we'll let you keep your family, but if we find out you're reading to them before bed, we're going to send CPS into the house. We realized we needed was a way of thinking about what it is we wanted to allow parents to do for their children, and what it is that we didn't need to allow parents to do for their children, if allowing those activities would create unfairness for other people's children. The test they devised was based on what they termed familial relationship goods, those unique and identifiable things that arise within the family unit and contribute to the flourishing of family members. For Swift, there's one particular choice that fails the test. Private schooling cannot be justified by the appeal to these familial relationship goods, he says. It's just not the case that in order for a family to realize these intimate, loving, authoritative, affectionate, love-based relationships, you need to be able to send your child to an elite private school. In contrast, reading bedtime stories, argues Swift, gives rise to acceptable family relationship goods, even though this also bestows advantage. The evidence shows that the difference between those who get bedtime stories and those don't, the difference in their life chances is bigger than the difference between those who get private schooling and those who don't. The devilish twist of evidence surely leads to a further conclusion that perhaps, in the interest of leveling the playing field, bedtime stories should be restricted. In Swift's mind, this is the evaluation of familial relationship goes up a notch. You have to allow parents to engage in bedtime story activities. In fact, we encourage them because those are the kinds of interactions between parents and children that do indeed foster and produce these desired familial relationship goods. Swift makes it clear that although both elite schooling and bedtime stories might skew the family game, restricting the former would not interfere with the creation of a special loving bond and families give rise to. Taking the books away is another story. We could prevent elite private schooling without any real hit to healthy family relationships, and most of your private schools are religious. Whereas if we say you can't read bedtime stories to your kids, it's not fair that some kids get them and others don't. That would be too big a hit at the core of family life. So parenting snuggling up for one last bedtime story ought to be even a little concerned about the advantage they might be conferring. I don't think that parents reading the bedtime stories should constantly have in their minds that they are unfairly disadvantaging other people's kids. They should think that they should have thought of it occasionally, though. In the end, Swift agrees that all activities will cause some sort of imbalance, yet life isn't fair, from joining faith communities to playing Saturday cricket, and it's for this reason that a theory of familial goods needs to be established if the family is to be defended against cries of unfairness. Fuck your unfairness. We should accept that lots of stuff that goes on in healthy families and that in our theory defense will confer unfair advantage. It is usually bind in ethics and morality philosophy. Very often values clash and you have to make a call. For Swift and Brighouse, the line sits shy of private schooling, inheritance, there it is, they told you, communists, Democrats hate inheritance. They hate that someone's parents actually fucking planned for their children. God forbid. The other predominantly economic ways of conferring advantage, their conclusions remind one of the more idyllic or mythological age for families, reading together, attending religious services, playing board games, and kicking a ball in the local park, not to mention enjoying roast dinner on Sunday. It conjures a family setting worthy of a classical Norman Rockwell painting, but not so fast. When you ask Swift what sort of families he is talking about, the 50s reverie comes crashing down into the 20th century. When we talk about parents' rights, we're talking about the person who is parenting the child. How you got to be the parent parenting the child is another issue. One implication of our theory is it's not one's biological relationship that does most work in justifying your rights with respect to how the child is parented. So for Swift and Brighouse, our society is curiously stuck in a time warp of proprietal rights. If you biologically produce a child, you own it. We think that although in practice it makes sense to your parent, your biological offspring, that is not the same as saying that in virtue having produced a child, the biological parent has the right to parent. Then does the child have the right to be parented by her biological parents? Swift has a ready answer. It's true that in the societies in which we live, biological origins do tend to form an important part of people's identity, but that is largely a social and cultural construct. So you could imagine societies in which the parent-child relationship could go really well even without there being a biological link. For this realization arises another twist. 2 is not the only number. Nothing in our theory assumes 2 parents. There might be 2, there might be 3, there might be 4. So it might be the biological parents, and then there might be 2 people put in there by the state to oversee the raising of the child. Or, this is where the teachers come into play, who should all be fired and imprisoned. It's here that the traditional notions of what constitutes family come apart. A necessary product of the Swift and Brighthouse analytical defense is calling into question some of the rigid definitions. Politicians love to talk about family values, but meanwhile the family is in flux, so we want to go back to philosophical basics to work it out. What are families for and what's so great about them, so we can start to figure out why it matters, why you have 2 parents, or why they're heterosexual, etc. For traditionalist thought, Swift provides a small concession. We do want to defend the family against complete fragmentation and dissolution, he says. If you start to think about having a child having 10 parents, then that's looking like a committee rearing a child. They aren't parents there at all. Although it's controversial, it seems that Swift and Brighthouse are philosophically inching their way into a novel accommodation for a weathered institution ever more in need of rationale for existence. No, there's no need to rationalize the existence of traditional family. The bathwater might be going out, but they're keen on holding on to the baby. Ridiculous. I mean, I knew what I was going to see when I found this article and read through it, but this is typical communism stuff. This is the direction they've been pushing the country in. And you have articles about designer babies where you can get genetics from 3 parents. This is the whole idea of, communes where you'd have these crazy orgies and no one would know who the father is, so they're just raised by the commune. And this whole concept of having a family an unfair advantage, and they've said yes. So all you need are enough crazy social justice warriors to say it's unfair and we need it abolished and the state needs to come in and do so. And you see this play out in this other article I found where InfoWars was covering. Let me just blow it up. Oberlin students want to abolish midterms and any grades below a C. Now, I wanted to do an experiment where I wanted to go to schools and get kids to sign on the Academic Affirmative Action and Equality Act, which was basically going to be that they would shave percent points off the top 1% of students and give them to everyone with a F or a D average, bumping them up to a C. Essentially, it makes it so there's no point in trying to get an A because you would just have those points taken away and given to the lower end of it. I mean, it's our tax system. It's basically saying, let's apply our tax system to your grades and seeing how the kids respond to that. But you have it going on. I hear my study was obviously already done for me. Oberlin students want to abolish midterms, any grades below a C. Put academics on the back burner so they can turn their attention to activism. More than 1,300 students at the Midwestern Liberal Arts College have now signed a petition asking that the college get rid of any grades below a C because, equality and whatnot for this semester. And some students are requesting alternates to the standard written midterm examinations, such as a conversation with the professor in lieu of an essay. So you basically get to be a sociopath and rationalize for the professor why you deserve to get get an A. And this is the fucking, every kid gets a trophy mentality. So I'm not going to get into the whole article. I feel like once you see some of this shit, you just know where it's going. So if anyone wants to read it, you can find it on InfoWars. But this is, again, the establishing of the equality. It's going to be like everyone's a winner, but again, can't read bedtime stories. So you're going to have people that are fucking dumb as rocks being told they're winners, and that's going to be the new good, and the new equality will be based off of stupid. It's basically leading us into Idiocracy, like the movie, where if someone actually can read and knows a 4-syllable word, they're going to be looked at like some sort of joke. And everyone else is just going to be fucking burping and farting at each other and making grunting noises, and that's going to be the normal. So, hope everyone enjoyed. We really, people have to think of a way to push back against this, because this is coming. The floodgates are open, and this is the direction things are going. And if you get like Hillary Clinton in office, or we keep electing liberal Democrats, it's only going to go further and faster in this direction. So, hope everyone enjoyed. Check the links below for my other endeavors, and ta-da!